Which head coach did the Dallas Cowboys hire in 2025? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting the way that we'd like them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And if you're watching with us on YouTube, you can see that it's a solo show. Landon McCool still out on assignment. He'll be back next Monday. But for the next couple of days, it's just going to be me. But that's okay. We've got some busy shows for you and some important shows. And on today's show, we're going to look at some coaching candidates the Cowboys could theoretically hire if they move on from Mike McCarthy after the 2024 season. At this point, it seems pretty likely that that's going to be the case. I have a hard time believing that McCarthy would get a contract extension unless this team goes to the NFC Championship game. Maybe if they win a wild card game and they lose a close divisional matchup, maybe they could bring him back on a 1 or 2 year deal. I think that's pretty unlikely. So let's look at a couple candidates that the Cowboys could, I'm going to say, realistically hire in 2025. And let's start with maybe the most obvious name. It's Bill Belichick, who I think a lot of people assumed was going to be in the running for the job this year after the Patriots let him go. But the Cowboys didn't really seem like they showed a lot of interest. And maybe that was on purpose. Maybe they did show some interest behind the scenes, but it wasn't something that they actively pursued in the media. And that's despite Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones being very close with Bill Belichick. And they've been very public and adamant about how much they respect Bill Belichick. And yet, no real offer on the table. I think there's a couple things here. I think number one, Bill Belichick was open to the idea of taking a year off. I think that was somewhat intriguing to him. And number two, I don't think that Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones wanted to pay two coaches again. I think they wanted to let Mike McCarthy ride this thing out. He has been successful over the last couple of years. Let him finish out his contract. I think it works for all parties involved. But I have some real concerns about Bill Belichick if the Cowboys were to go in that direction in 2025. But let's start with the positives. The positives would be instant credibility to your coaching staff, instant credibility to the franchise. I think if the Cowboys have Bill Belichick on the sideline, I don't think they would be viewed as a pushover. And I don't think they're viewed as a pushover now. That's the wrong word. I think teams and organizations around the league would view the Cowboys as having a coaching advantage for maybe the first time in a long time. I also think the defense would continue to be unbelievable. You give Bill Belichick a defense with Micah Parsons, with Trayvon Diggs, with DaRon Bland, and then we'll see who steps up this year. We'll see what Mozzie Smith does. I think he would turn this defense into one of the best in the league. Now, it would be totally different than Dan Quinn. It would be totally different than Mike Zimmer. It would be a much more sound defense. The Cowboys would have to go out and get some different types of players. Bill Belichick likes to have some bigger guys up front. He generally likes bigger linebackers. I think you could figure those out. He's pretty good at finding those type of guys. But I think the defensive part of this is what's so intriguing about Bill Belichick. If you're really concerned about stopping the run and you're really concerned about stopping the Shanahans and Jordan Love and Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts, bringing in Bill Belichick will help you against all of those type of offenses. So that's the appealing part of Bill Belichick. The part that makes me nervous actually isn't his age, which I believe he'd be 72 or 73 by the time the Cowboys hire him. I think it's the offense, which it's a concern, because you look at what this offense has been in the post-Tom Brady era in New England. It's been rough, and I understand the quarterback concerns, right? It's been Mac Jones, it's been Bailey Zappi. They haven't had quality quarterback play in a while. But what makes me more concerned is the coaches that Bill Belichick has brought in to run his offense. It's been Matt Patricia. It's been Joe Judge. It's been bringing back Bill O'Brien after a couple of years out of the NFL. I don't like the coaching staff hires that he's made. I don't like the style of offense that he's been trying to run. And again, maybe that's because of the quarterback play, that he's had no choice but to turn into this ultra conservative type of offense with Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. Now, that wasn't always the case with Tom Brady. When they had Brady and they had Josh McDaniels running the offense, they were aggressive. They were innovative. But can he be different in 2025 and beyond? I have my concerns. I also think if you're bringing in Bill Belichick to be your next head coach, it's with the idea that you're bringing back Dak Prescott, right? Because I don't see Bill Belichick signing on with the Cowboys and all of a sudden starting a rebuild and drafting a new quarterback or running with Trey Lance as a starter. That just doesn't make any sense. Like Bill Belichick isn't going to want to do that, right? He's going to want to take over a team that is close to winning a championship, that he can make a couple tweaks to, a couple little changes, and all of a sudden become a serious Super Bowl contender. So if you bring back Dak Prescott, I think Bill Belichick becomes a much more realistic option. But you better have a team that's ready to compete. That's where I think things get a little bit hairy. I'm of the belief a little bit, and we'll talk about this on tomorrow's show. I'm of the belief that this team really does need a reset, not maybe a blow it up, but maybe a reset where they get their books in order. They shed some of the dead cap money. They get a little bit younger at some spots. I'm just not sure Bill Belichick is ready for that type of rebuild. And I understand. I don't think he needs to be doing that. I think he wants to take over a team that is ready to win now. So I think if Belichick becomes the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys in 2025, what it likely means is that the 2024 season went similar to the way that it's gone the last couple of years, where the Cowboys win 11, 12, 13 games. They stall out some point early on in the playoffs, whether that's in round 1 or round 2. And Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones are bringing in Bill Belichick to finish the job. So I'm not out on Bill Belichick by any means. I think he could work, but I would like to know before they hire him, who is he hiring as his offensive coordinator? Who is he hiring as his defensive coordinator? And maybe what's the succession plan here? Like, how long is Bill planning on being in Dallas? Is he going to leave them with a coaching option that can take his place whenever he decides to move on? So again, I don't mind Bill Belichick. It doesn't excite me the way it might have 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, but I'd still be relatively excited about Bill Belichick. Let's talk about one of his former players as a potential option for the Dallas Cowboys. Let's discuss Mike Vrabel as an option in 2025 next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Listen, I love sports. There's nothing more that I love than at the end of the day, sitting on my couch or in my recliner and watching sports. But unfortunately, with the playoffs winding down, we just have fewer and fewer games to watch. And the sports aren't sporting the way we'd like them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app on my phone, and I can dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. I've been looking at some of the Major League Baseball lines every single day, watching my Pirates. I've also been checking out the NFL futures. We've seen some movement with the Cowboys over the last couple of days. So go check on all of those lines and odds, of course. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that unnecessary screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, we discussed Bill Belichick as an option. He is very much a go for it now, win now option, probably a 1 to 3 year option for the Cowboys if they decide to go in that direction. But let's talk about a coach that maybe could be a more long-term solution, and that is Mike Vrabel, who was recently fired from the Tennessee Titans. I believe in 2024, he's working with the Browns as a consultant. He will surely be a name that's right back in the cycle this year or next year because of his pedigree. You look at his track record, the Titans have been very competitive with him in the sidelines. He's also just one of the most respected coaches in the NFL. Players absolutely love him. Let's talk about the positives. You look at Mike Vrabel's track record as a defensive mind, and he's been awesome. I mean, the Titans have been one of the best defenses in the NFL over the last 7 or 8 years, and it's really because of Mike Vrabel. There was a game, I got to try to remember this, 2 years ago, 2022. They played the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City on a Sunday night football game, and this was Malik Willis's first start. It might have been his second start. And they nearly upset the Chiefs. They went to overtime against the Chiefs, and they had one first down in the final 35 minutes of that game. The Titans did. They could do nothing on offense, but Mike Vrabel's defense, time and time again, found ways to bother Patrick Mahomes, to get him off rhythm, to get him off schedule, and he can frustrate really good quarterbacks. And that's where you watch in some of these playoff games over the last 5 or 6 years, the Lamar Jackson MVP season in 2019. That Baltimore offense was unstoppable. They meet the Titans in round 2. Titans upset them because they were so good on that side of the ball. You look at them in the final game of Tom Brady in New England. The Titans go into New England and upset them really because of their defense. They almost beat Joe Burrow in the Bengals in the 2021 playoffs. That was another one where the offense gave them absolutely nothing. Vrabel's defenses are hard-nosed. They're physical. They're tough. In a lot of ways, they're everything that Dallas isn't. Dallas has more playmakers. They're splashier. They get more big plays. But I think if the Cowboys want to start having the identity of being a tough, physical team, which is something that, frankly, they just haven't been since Bill Parcells was the head coach back in 2006. I mean, they've had good teams. I mean, obviously they've had really good teams, but I don't think anybody has identified them as a tough, gritty team. Bringing in Mike Vrabel will help you do that. He will make your team tougher. Now, there's going to be some guys on this roster that just won't cut it, and Vrabel will move on from if he doesn't believe they fit the style that he likes to coach. But that's why you bring in Mike Vrabel, is to be a physical, tough team. The downside of Mike Vrabel is the offense. It's very much similar to Bill Belichick. Now, the good thing for Vrabel is that he's had a lot of success hiring offensive coaches. He had Matt LaFleur was his coach as his offensive coordinator 1 year. Obviously went on to become the Green Bay Packers head coach, and look at all the success they've had. Even Arthur Smith during the 2018-2019 run with the Titans, when they were, they made Ryan Tannehill a Pro Bowl quarterback and saved his career. Arthur Smith went on to become a head coach with the Falcons. Now, that did not pan out well, but that's two offensive coordinators that Vrabel hired that went on to be promoted to become head coaches. So clearly Vrabel has an eye for talent. But the issue is, whenever you're hiring whenever you're hiring a defensive-minded head coach and you find a quality offensive coordinator, more often than not, that guy's just not going to stick around. They're going to get more opportunities. So you better be comfortable with changeover and different schemes at on offense. And maybe the Cowboys are. Maybe the Cowboys would hire Vrabel with the idea of, hey, Dak and Brian Schottenheimer, you're going to run the offense. I'll run the defense. And that'll be that. I have some problems with that. I think from a long-term stability standpoint, that's not always a great idea. But that's just kind of the way we are when it comes to hiring a defensive-minded head coach. There is a lot to like about Mike Vrabel. There's a lot to like. You look at his winning percentage, it's well above 500. You look at how well he's performed with lesser talent. I mean, you look at some of those teams on offense for Tennessee. It's Ryan Tannehill, who was a backup at that point. Miami benched him, was kind of out of the league, not out of the league, but he was an afterthought. All of a sudden, they're playing in big playoff games. The offensive line was never all that great. Now, they did have Derrick Henry, and they had A.J. Brown before trading him away, although Mike Vrabel didn't want to trade A.J. Brown. He looks pretty good in hindsight there. I think Mike Vrabel is a very interesting option if the Cowboys come to the conclusion that they need to be more physical, they need to be tougher, and they want a culture changer on the sidelines. I do think Vrabel is a very good option, but just like Bill Belichick, want to make sure that he has the right coaching staff in place. Who is he planning on hiring as his offensive coordinator? Who is he hiring as his offensive line coach? Who is going to be his top lieutenant on the defensive side of the ball? I think who he hires as his next staff is going to be very important. And maybe this is why taking a year off will be good for Vrabel. It will give him some time to make some other connections in the league, to talk to other folks about potentially joining his staff. Mike McCarthy did this in his year off. He was able to make some different hires. Now, he hired Mike Nolan. That didn't work out. A year later, they hired Dan Quinn. That obviously did. I won't be surprised if the year off does Mike Vrabel a lot of good. And if I had to rank Belichick versus Vrabel as an option for the Cowboys, I actually think I would prefer Vrabel just because of his youth. And frankly, his track record over the last 5 or 6 years has been better. Now, if you want to do the full track record, obviously Belichick is going to blow him away. But I do think that Vrabel's coaching style and his defenses are maybe better suited for today's NFL. But I'm also not dismissing Bill Belichick either. I'm cool with either, but I think if I had to pick one or the other, I probably would go with Mike Vrabel. But neither of those two options are my favorite. Let's talk about my favorite option for the Dallas Cowboys, Ben Johnson. We will get to him next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to make sure that you have quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to a perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like your professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Everydayers, on tomorrow's show, we're going to be discussing how valuable is Mike McCarthy as a head coach? Should the Cowboys consider blowing up the roster? And what will Marquise Bell's role be in 2024? So make sure you tune in for that. But we are finishing up here with 3 potential, likely, however you want to say it, coaching candidates for the Dallas Cowboys in 2025. And let's discuss Ben Johnson, who I think of the three names on this list, I think he's probably the most intriguing. First and foremost, he's a young offensive-minded head coach or offensive coordinator who is obviously going to be an offensive-minded head coach. That's already something that is intriguing to me. You look at a lot of the best teams in the NFL today, whether that's the Rams with Sean McVay, the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan, the Packers with Matt LaFleur, the Chiefs with Andy Reid, who's not really young, but still an offensive-minded head coach. I think that's the best path forward when it comes to establishing year-over-year success. It's too hard to redesign and rebuild an offense every single year. It's easier to do it on the defensive side of the ball, and I just think there's more quality defensive-minded coaching candidates out there. Look at the Cowboys with Mike Zimmer this year, right? They lose Dan Quinn, they bring back Mike Zimmer, and we're all really excited about Mike Zimmer for good reason. There's just not that many of the offensive-minded guys around because they're all head coaches, and if they're not a head coach, it's usually because they are older or they have some sort of fatal flaw, whether it's like a Bill Callahan, who is a really good offensive line coach, but not really a good play caller and offensive play design type of coach. So it's easier to find a quality defensive coordinator than it is to find a quality offensive coordinator. So bringing in Ben Johnson, you allow him to build the offense. I love what he's done with Jared Goff over the last couple of years. I mean, if you remember, the Lions got Jared Goff. They got him in the trade with Matt Stafford, but it wasn't like they got him, quote unquote, got him. He was basically thrown into the trade, and the Rams had to attach a second first-round pick onto the trade so the Lions would take Jared Goff. This was somebody who was pretty close to being out of a starting job in the NFL, and now Jared Goff is widely viewed as a top 12-ish quarterback in the league. We just saw an ESPN ranking by NFL executives, coaches, and decision makers where a few put Jared Goff ahead of Dak Prescott. I don't agree with that, but that shows you the job that Ben Johnson has done rebuilding this offense. He's also made that offense very unique and balanced. I thought they did a really good job of balancing David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. They turned Amon-Ra St. Brown into an all-pro receiver. That was a fifth-round pick from USC. Now he's widely viewed as one of the best receivers in the NFL. Sam Laporta had a monster rookie season. And maybe this is one of the negatives for Ben Johnson is that the Lions have had so much talent on offense, including their offensive line, which I think is the best in the league, that it would be easy to design an offense around all those players. But I actually don't think that's the case. When you don't have a superstar quarterback like a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, a Joe Burrow, insert whatever name you want, but yet you are able to have a ton of offensive success, I think that usually reflects well on the offensive coordinator. I love that Ben Johnson is young. I love that he's got a lot of energy. It seems like the players really like him. He's only 38 years old, so the Cowboys would be hiring when he's 39. My biggest concern with Ben Johnson is he's not been a coach for very long. He's been a tight ends coach. He's been a wide receiver coach. He was the tight end coach for the Lions. He became the passing game coordinator. He's only been an offensive coordinator for 2 years in the NFL. This will be his third year. So what kind of staff would he be able to assemble? I don't know. But generally, coaches around the league have a pretty good sense of who's next, right? And who's going to be really good. And I do think Ben Johnson taking this next year, being the offensive coordinator for the Lions, will allow him to maybe showcase his talent around the league a little bit more, maybe help him build a staff. It's pretty clear that Ben Johnson wants to be a head coach. He talked about it at one of the press conferences this year. He wants to be a head coach, but he wants to make sure it's the right job. Are the Cowboys the right job for him? I don't know. But I think of these three head coaches, he is the most intriguing if the Cowboys decide not to sign Dak Prescott to a long-term deal. Now, I think obviously Ben Johnson would love to work with Dak. I think he would love to work with CeeDee Lamb and the rest of the offense. But I also think there's a possibility where maybe Ben Johnson wants his own quarterback. Maybe he wants to draft his own quarterback or sign his own quarterback or trade for his own quarterback. The other two guys in this list, Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel, I would have some major concerns about their ability to draft and develop a quarterback. I think Ben Johnson would be somebody where obviously I think it would work out really well if Dak was here. I think he could turn Dak into an even better quarterback and the offense could be even more dynamic and balanced. But if he wanted to get his own guy and he signs a long deal, let's say it's a 5-6 year deal, I think that does open the possibility of the Cowboys potentially moving on from Dak Prescott. But at that time, we'll already know where we're at with Dak. Because if Dak doesn't sign a long-term deal this offseason, I have a hard time believing he's going to sign one next offseason. But Ben Johnson would be a really interesting coach if the plan is to tear it down for a year and let him build the offense the way he wants to build it and not basically just try to tinker and retool Mike McCarthy's offense, but truly build a roster that he wants to build and develop. And I think he's looking for the right situation with the right front office that'll give him the keys to the franchise and truly allow him to be the head coach that he wants to be. So ranking these three options for the Dallas Cowboys in 2025, I would go Ben Johnson, number one. He's the offensive-minded coach. He's the youngest of the three. I think he probably has the most upside. Number two, I would go Mike Vrabel. I love his toughness. I love the competitive edge that he would bring to the Cowboys. I love what he could do for the defense. And number three is Bill Belichick. I still very much respect Bill Belichick. I think he would do a really good job in Dallas, but he's just not the long-term solution that maybe the Cowboys need. I think he is somebody that's going to try to win right away and then be out in 3 years. Try to break Don Shula's record, maybe try to get the Cowboys back to the Super Bowl, but he's not a long-term option. And that's why I gravitate to some of the younger guys. I would like the Cowboys to find their Kyle Shanahan, to find their Sean McVay, to find their DeMeco Ryans if they decide to go on the defensive side of the ball. Give me a long-term option at the head coach position that can truly create some stability with the Cowboys that they just haven't had really since, I was going to say Jimmy Johnson, but Jimmy Johnson didn't even create that stability because he wasn't here for very long, really since Tom Landry. That's why I think Ben Johnson has to be the number one name the Dallas Cowboys target, assuming they move on from Mike McCarthy after the 2025 season. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Again, on tomorrow's show, we're going to be discussing the blow it up option for the Cowboys, what Marquise Bellis' role is going to be in 2024, and then how much does Mike McCarthy actually matter for the Cowboys? So tune in for that. Again, we will see you guys right back here tomorrow. Check out Locked On Cowboys on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys.